I heard the voice, but I didn't hear the beep. So I'm going to assume we're in recording.
Heard the beep and the lights on.
Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to our special meeting of the Board of Education to discuss the budget. Monday, March 29th. Again, this is a remote session. I will call the meeting to order at 7:05 and ask that we do our oh my gosh, pledge allegiance. We're going to sing the national anthem. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the hearing of privilege of the floor. And again, there'll be no hearing of privilege of the floor. And again, I encourage you that if you have questions to do one of the routes we've been talking about over the last few months, to contact everyone. So with that, I'm going to move to the superintendent's comments. Superintendent Schwartz.
Thank you, Dave. So this evening, my comments will be brief. This afternoon, I sent to the board a link so that you can purchase tickets to the virtual production of our high school drama club, which is called Ordinary People. We got some great press in the Schenectady Gazette yesterday, lead article, and I'm quite impressed with our students who have really risen to the occasion and tackled this project full speed ahead, and I think the show's going to be great. I purchased my ticket this afternoon. As we all know, I'm not necessarily always real technical, but it's not at all difficult to do that online. And then you actually have a window where you can watch the production stream between April 1st and April 7th. So I encourage you to do that. The other thing I want to mention to you is that the end of the fall 2 sports season will be April 30th, but the beginning of the spring sports season is going to be April 25th. I bring that up to you because, again, depending on how things go with our fields, the rest of our fields, we're going to be pretty tight for space right through the spring. We will have 2 athletic seasons overlapping, as we did this time. And of course, we need things to go well in April in order to be able to be on the fields in April. So I just want to make you aware of that. And Dave, that's all I have tonight.
Oh, thank you, Susan. Anyone have a question about that for Susan?
I think it's ordinary days, not ordinary people, but excited to have that out there.
Thank you. Yes, it is. Yes, ordinary people was something else, Rick. You're right. 100%. It's ordinary days. Thank you.
I'm rebuying my ticket.
When are we going to be presented the spring sports to talk about and vote on?
It will most likely be the April 12th board meeting.
Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to ask for a reading of the recommendation, and then we'll open up the final discussion for the budget.
And Dave, once you get that reading, I do have a brief PowerPoint.
Okay.
I'll move that the Board of Education of Scotia Glenville School District be authorized to expend the sum set forth in the total of $59,127,425 during the 2021-22 school year and to levy the necessary tax therefore.
Thank you, Pam. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Hal. We will have Susan do the presentation prior to discussion. It's all yours.
Thank you, Dave. Karen, can you put that up?
You should be seeing it, Susan.
It's on, Susan.
Oh, it is. I don't see it, but that's okay. As long as you can see it, that's, I've got it in front of me anyway.
Let me double check. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Yes. Okay. So we're seeing it. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Okay. So Karen, if you could take us to the next slide for goals. So the three goals I have set for this evening are to respond to any questions from the March 22nd presentation. I actually don't think there were any that haven't been addressed, but certainly want to give you a opportunity to ask if there are. To have you adopt the proposed budget, the spending cap for 21-22, and then I want to discuss and plan for any additional financial aid the district may receive in the next week or so as we wait anxiously for the governor's budget to settle out. Next slide, Karen. So what we are currently proposing is this $59.1 million budget. The tax levy increase for that is 2.02%. And the expenditure increase is 1.66%. And you know that we reached that from the rollover budget, which is where we take everything that's in this year, we put it all into next year, by eliminating two positions that are both retirements and not refilling those positions due to enrollments. Next slide, Karen. As a refresher, when we talk about revenue, one of the things that I think is very, very telling is if you look at how much of our budget is made up of property tax, so what we levy on our community, it's well over 50% at this point. And then our state aid continues to sit relatively stable, but has been declining. So revenue-wise, we're very dependent upon our community. And I say that because I want those listening tonight to know that I do recognize that. I live in this community. So certainly it's personal to me also. And although I might wish that schools were funded somewhat differently, at this point in time, they aren't. So that is the two major components that fund our school district. You'll notice that the next largest component is our fund balance. And you know that Mr. Giaquinto and I have both been working very diligently since I came in 2005 to reduce our reliance on fund balance. But we still rely pretty heavily on that. Karen, if you could go to the next slide. And now if you're wondering how we spend, how we are going to spend the 2021 budget. This is fairly typical for us. The percentages have shifted, I would say, by less than a point, if at all, sometimes by 1/10 of a point. But at this moment in time, 77.9% of our budget is tied up in our employees and benefits. The board is well aware that we have contracts with several bargaining groups here. Those contracts are what we use to determine pay scale for the coming year and what's going to happen. So if you take a look at that pie chart, you can see that instruction is, again, just over half of our budget. And it should be. We're a school district, so we would certainly expect that the bulk of our cost is going to be in our people, followed by their benefits. And again, the rest of it looks pretty similar to what you typically see. There have not been any large shifts or changes. Drew, do you want to comment on either revenue or expenditures? Okay. Karen, if you could take us to our next slide. Now, we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks. What happens if we get more money? This keeps coming up. But you know, as I sit here with you tonight, although we anticipate there will be more state aid, we know that both houses have approved at their levels budgets that increase spending to education. We don't really know at this moment in time what that means, how much money. So when we think about what we might do going forward, there are basically three options. One would be that we take whatever funding we receive in terms of our state aid changes to the governor's proposal and use it to reduce the tax rate, which means we'd use it to close the gap. So you remember we started out with a $800,000 gap. We closed it by about 200,000. That kept our tax levy limit above 0.13. The closer we can get to that, the happier I'd be. You could also save it, or you could spend it. And of course, you know, being the conservative I am, I would discourage you from spending it, particularly since we don't know what it is. And we do know that this is going to be a fiscally challenging year, but the ones beyond even more so. So Mr. Giaquinto and I would say to you this evening, we think we should take any additional aid that we pick up and use it to reduce our tax rate. You might recall early on, the governor wanted to take all of our expense-driven aid, so textbook, hardware, excess cost aid, and put those into one pie called service aid. That was not successful, so we anticipate that as that evens itself back out and we get, aid is based on what you spent in the prior year, that we get for those areas the aid that we were expecting. We will pick up some additional funding there. In the expense-driven aids, but also that our state aid, which has been flat since 17-18, may actually increase. So those are the two numbers we're waiting to hear. Both Drew and I had heard we might see them this weekend. We did not. Nothing has come out today, correct? That you've seen. So we're in this kind of waiting game. And again, we're not going to use that money to go over the 59.1 million. What we would do is use it to reduce our costs under that spending cap. So Dave, I think the real crux of what I need you and the board to do for me tonight is, first of all, to let me know if there are any questions we haven't addressed. And we will answer them tonight if we can. If I don't feel confident that we can answer them tonight, we will have answers for you before the week is out. But also, I'd like some sense of where the board sees the use of any additional state aid we might see. So Dave, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to do our usual going down this list, and just to make the first round of discussion easiest. Dan?
Thanks, Dave. I'm actually, I'm fine with using any bound money, any extra funds that we might get to pay down the tax rate. I actually think 2.02 is reasonable rate, but I understand we're over the tax cap, and the lower we go, the better chance we have of passing the budget. So I'm fine with that.
Dave?
I would agree with every word Dan just said. Thank you, Dan.
Hal?
The only thing, I would ask is if we saved it. I know prior meetings that we've had, we've talked about possibly next year, 22, 23 might be tough as well. And depending on how much the extra aid is, what would that do? So this time next year during budget season, we're not having to sit and cut potential teachers again and reorganize kids around. So if we use it to reduce the tax rate now, I'm fine with that. But I would just ask, what would it do if we saved it going into the following year? Thank you.
Thanks, Hal. And I don't think it's an either or, but we'll get to that. We'll ask Susan that.
Drew's going to say a few things about that.
Right now, there's proposed legislation that would allow districts to maintain 8% of fund balance instead of 4%, which would address like Hal's concern of taking some of the money and putting it in the bank for the subsequent budget year. So we'll watch that with eager eyes and ears to see if we're allowed to keep more money over the statutory limit than the current year.
Right. Thanks, Drew.
Thank you, Drew. Kim?
Well, I agree with Dave and Dan, but I also am glad Hal asked that question because that was going to be my next question because, you know, there's always a ripple effect. So Hal just answered my other question, so I'm good with it.
Thank you. Pam?
Yeah, I would like to see it used to reduce the tax levy unless we get a whole lot back. And then I'd like to see us save some of it for the reasons that Hal put forth.
Yeah, thanks. Rick?
So I think reducing the tax is a smart way to use one-time money. It'd be great to know exactly what, you know, if there's any kind of strings attached to the money, and then have that conversation then if it can only be used in a certain way. You know, I don't know if that, you know what that is yet or not, but I definitely support reducing the tax.
Thanks, Rick. I feel the same way. I believe it's good to reduce the tax. I think it'd be good to get a little bit higher than the 4% if we possibly can. You know, we don't want to hang on to people's money, but at the same time, it would reduce any potential damage next year that could happen if in a bad budget year. And we don't have to hold it for any longer, so we could just reduce taxes the following year with that money. I also agree with Rick, you know, if there is some targeted money, we'll have to follow those rules for the targeted money, but you know, I think the plan to do a little bit of both would really make sense. I like the idea of getting below that 2% if possible. And, you know, tough year for a lot of people. So lowering the taxes, I think, would be a good idea.
And I would say to you that the state aid money, certainly our foundation aid, which is driven by our number of students, and also the expense-driven aids, it makes perfectly good sense to use that money in a way to close the gap and reduce our taxes. It really is going to be the stimulus money that will come with, my feeling is strings attached in terms of how it gets spent and over how much time. Drew, would you add anything?
The two current things with the stimulus money is we know that some of that's going to be earmarked for academic recovery, lost education. The preliminary numbers were about $603,000 was our carve out, which will be, like what Rick was saying, will be strings attached. We don't know if it's going to be through the federal grant that we have to administer that or through the general fund. We don't know that. So like Susan's saying, we do know there will be a slight increase probably in foundation aid and maybe the service expense-driven aids. But we're waiting again for the stimulus money. What are the strings and what's the period that it pertains to? 2 years, 3 years, or whatever.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And I think this goes without saying that when we do know, we'd appreciate it being on the next docket of the next, you know, the next agenda for our call. I know you'll already do that, but.
Yes, once we know, you'll know.
Right. Any other questions? I'll open it up to anyone who wants to ask any questions about the budget. Going once. Going twice. Okay. So our, Karen, could you put our agenda back if you don't mind? So our task right now then is to vote on the superintendent's recommendation. I'll do an individual vote on this. Yay, nay, abstain. Dan?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Hal?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Rick?
Yay.
I should have gone the other order, sorry. And David? Yay as well. We have a budget voted on and approved. Fantastic job by everyone that worked so hard to get to this point. Great job, all I can say. At this point, I'll open up for other business. Is there any other business that we need to attend to? Oh, just one thing, just to remind folks, Susan, can you again give the dates that are critical right now? The May.
Yes, May 5th will be our budget hearing. And I'm hoping we're live for that. And also, if not, we'll conduct it like a town hall, I would guess. And May 18th is the budget vote. As you know, last year things did get moved. I don't anticipate that happening this year, but I suppose that is always possible.
Thank you. Thanks. Is there any other business? If not, again, I'll remind folks the hearing privilege of the floor to communicate through email or directly through the website. That's the school website. And if there's nothing else, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed to adjourning? Anyone abstaining from adjourn? We have a budget. We have a closed meeting. I hope everyone has a happy Passover if that's what you celebrate, or a happy Easter if that's what you celebrate, or a happy weekend if you don't celebrate either. So everybody be well, stay safe. Get your shot. I think we're all eligible now. And be well all. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who worked so hard. Appreciate it. Take care.